We've now learned the names of the two West Virginia National Guard members who were shot at point-blank range just blocks from the White House. The Justice Department identifying them as 20-year-old Sarah Beckstrom and 24-year-old Andrew Wolf. We understand they've undergone surgery and remain in critical condition.
We're also learning new details about the suspect. Authorities say the 29-year-old Afghan national traveled across the country from Washington state to the nation's capital before the attack. We'll have the latest on the investigation in a moment. First, I want to get to CNN's Brian Todd, who's live at the shooting scene. And Brian, you're learning more about how this attack played out.
That's right, Omar and Boris. We have important new information this afternoon on how the attack played out. We're going to get to what Janine Pirro said about that in just a second. But first, we have access here that we have not had before to the actual spot where the shooting occurred. I'm standing at the spot right now. And if you come over here with me, our photojournalist Jay McMichael and I are going to walk you over here. This area here, excuse me, ma'am. This is the bus shelter where, according to officials, at least one of the guardsmen tried to take cover at, and you can see that a plexiglass panel here has been shot out. You can see the fragmented glass up there. This panel is gone, and I'm going to walk you over here to this planter. It appears here that there is a bullet hole here that entered here and exited here of this planter. There's another planter over here. Jay's going to shoot you a close-up of that, and there's another planter here where this part has been removed. I'm going to walk you over here to show you that part of the planter that was removed. And in the meantime, you see a makeshift memorial here to the victims, people laying flowers and an American flag. Over here is a part of that panel that was actually removed, and you can see additional bullet holes here, one here, one here. And this looks like some evidence that was handled by authorities as they started to process the scene last evening. So in addition to that, we have new information from Janine Pirro. She is the U.S. Attorney General for the District of Columbia. Earlier today, she spoke to us about the sequence of gunshots. Take a listen.
A lone gunman opened fire without provocation, ambush style, armed with a .357 Smith & Wesson revolver. One guardsman is struck, goes down, and then the shooter leans over and strikes the guardsman again. Another guardsman is struck several times.
And both of those guardsmen are now in critical condition at a local hospital. We have made inquiries with the hospital to learn more about the surgeries and about where they're being treated. The hospital's not gotten back to us on that. As Boris and Omar mentioned, they're identified as Sarah Beckstrom, 20 years old, Andrew Wolf, 24 years old. Those are the two guard members who were struck yesterday in this attack. Beckstrom has been on the guard since 2023, according to officials. Andrew Wolf has been in the guard since 2019. According to officials at the news conference, were sworn in yesterday. We believe that meant that they were sworn in not as new guard members, but sworn in as deputies for the U.S. Marshals, which they have to do about every month. Guys, back to you.
Brian Todd live for us in Washington, D.C. We hope to learn a positive update on those guard members at some point soon. CNN senior national security reporter Zach Cohen joins us now. Zach, take us through what we've learned about the suspect.
Yeah, we're learning quite a lot about his background. It's a 29-year-old Afghan national who came to the United States in 2021 as part of this program that was implemented by the Biden administration after the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan. Now, it seems that why he was allowed to come to the U.S. in part was because of his work with the U.S. military and CIA. He was, our understanding, he served in an elite counterterrorism unit that worked directly with U.S. intelligence and military units in Afghanistan, including active combat against Taliban forces at the time. And so there were thousands of those individuals who served in those roles that were evacuated when the Taliban started to rise to power after the U.S. left. And it appears that was the basis for his immigration into the United States. Now, of course, several layers of vetting and took place after he got here. He was only temporarily allowed to come here at first, but his background with the CIA and the intelligence community does seem to be the basis for his travel to the U.S.
So what was that vetting process actually like? Because obviously there were a lot of Afghans that were coming over as part of that Operation Allies Welcome.
Yeah, by all accounts, it should have been very extensive. We know that in that initial process, he would have been vetted by the U.S. government, including the CIA. And then once he was granted temporary asylum, as he applied for permanent status, he would have gone through a variety of different layers of vetting. Those include identity and background checks, checks, biometric vetting, in-person interviews, assessment of an individual risk, and eligibility under U.S. law. So that's several layers. I mean, it's important to remember, too, the ultimate approval and of his asylum application was granted under the Trump administration in 2025.
Important in the context of the president and allies saying that this was the policy of the previous administration to let folks in without vetting. Important to keep that in mind. Zach Cohen, thank you so much. Let's get some perspective now with Donnell Harvin. He is the former head of Homeland Security and Intelligence for Washington, D.C., also a member of the faculty at Georgetown University's Emergency and Disaster Management Program. Donnell, thank you so much for being with us. Happy Thanksgiving. We're grateful that you could share some time. I wonder what a review, as the president has said, of every migrant admitted to the U.S. under the previous administration would look like, as we've also learned that officials are going to pause any migration case related to Afghans pending further review. What does all of that entail?
That entails going through and interviewing quite possibly anywhere from 70 to nearly 100,000 people, depending on what reports you read. It's got to be very clear to the audience that, you know, these Afghan asylum seekers who've come over have committed crimes at such a low rate. I was unable to find any major crimes that were committed by these individuals. These individuals and their family members serve the U.S. service members abroad, help save lives. In fact, there's many documented cases of former service people going over to rescue them even after the evacuation. What happens is that once these individuals go through that layered process of vetting and they get into the United States, they're kind of free to move around the country at their will. There's no further surveillance of them. There's no surveillance state of them. They're just like any other asylum seeker. They'll go through their process, and throughout their process, they will have interviews, and then they'll be part of a normal, non-enhanced vetting. What I believe that the administration is talking about now is some type of advanced vetting. The other thing I wanted to mention is that when you interview these people, when they go through the vetting process, you're looking behind, right? You're looking at their previous history, their ideology, who they've been associated with. That can't predict the future. And so this is the difficult part that the administration finds themselves in now.
Yeah, especially as we've seen so many cases of people being radicalized through a number of different means, if this in fact turns out to be terrorism. And that leads me to the next question. How is it that officials determine a motive accurately here? Because you have the administration saying that this was terrorism, but the investigators themselves have to piece that together to show evidence of it.
Yeah, in the absence of the surviving individual who's now under arrest cooperating, all reports saying he's not cooperating, they can still piece together their background, who they communicated with. You know, Boris, you and I have been on this topic for many times. Yeah. Invariably, many of these individuals who are radicalized and mobilized to violence have some type of breadcrumb trails. We call that leakage. They may have told someone, they may have intimated this online, spoken with someone, shown some type of signs. It's always some type of signs. People just don't wake up, drive across the country with a gun and open fire on uniformed service members. So there's going to be something there they'll be able to find, even though he's not cooperating.
I wanted to go back to something that you alluded to a moment ago, and that is the suspect's previous relationship with the U.S. government and his work in Afghanistan, including with the CIA, according to Director John Ratcliffe. How do you read that relationship?
You know, everything I've read that's open source available says that he served honorably and was trusted at a very high level. Like you don't get attached to a secret top secret unit with the CIA and special operations if you haven't been vetted even before the evacuation, right? So they trusted this individual quite possibly with their life to make sure that they wouldn't leak any information to adversaries, what they're doing, their movements, what they're looking for. And so something drastic has had to happen over the last 3 years since he's gotten here, Boris. This is really unprecedented. And in a year that the word unprecedented has been used an unprecedented amount of times, we need to just sit back and look at how bonkers this is, that someone would actually open fire on U.S. service members. I did some research before we came on. I haven't seen any incident of this in my lifetime, and I'm over 50 years old.
And Donnell Harvin, thank you so much for the perspective. Appreciate you.